The cameras weren't rolling that evening when Veronica first met Jamal. It wasn't one of those staged encounters at an airport or a dramatic reunion filmed for television. It was a quiet dinner in Charlotte, far away from any production lights, the kind of moment that felt too ordinary to ever make it to TV. But for her, it was the start of something that felt almost cinematic. Veronica had promised herself she wouldn't fall for anyone new so soon. After all, her history on 90 Day Fiancé, the single life, had already made her cautious. Fans had watched her ups and downs, her laughter, her heartbreaks, her resilience. She'd become a symbol of strength for single mums everywhere, juggling love and motherhood under the scrutiny of millions. But that night she wasn't a reality star. She was just Veronica, a woman who still believed that maybe love could surprise her again. Jamal came into her life with the ease of someone who didn't try too hard. He wasn't the type to make grand gestures or big promises. His charm lay in his calmness, his grounded way of speaking, his quiet confidence. He was younger, yes, but not in the reckless way people might assume. He was thoughtful, educated, and surprisingly patient. Their first conversation flowed effortlessly. They talked about travel, about the weirdness of dating after being on TV, and about how fame didn't really change who you were, unless you let it. Veronica found herself laughing more than she had in months. Jamal had a way of making her feel seen, not as the ex from the show, but as the woman sitting in front of him, sipping wine and brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. What began as a casual friendship quickly grew into something neither of them had planned. They kept their connection low-key at first, exchanging late-night texts and stolen weekends whenever their schedules allowed. When they were finally seen together on social media, the internet went wild. Fans called them an unexpected match, but others couldn't stop talking about the age gap. Veronica tried to ignore the noise. She had lived long enough in the world of judgment and gossip to know that love doesn't always make sense to outsiders. What mattered was how she felt when she was with him. Calm, safe, and hopeful. Jamal had an energy that grounded her, and she, in turn, brought warmth and depth to his world. There was something refreshing about how simple it felt in the beginning. They weren't trying to impress anyone. There were no cameras, no contracts, no producers pushing a storyline. Just two people discovering each other slowly, quietly. Still, Veronica couldn't help but wonder if this peace could last. She'd seen what the spotlight could do to a relationship, how every gesture, every silence, every tiny misunderstanding could turn into a headline. But Jamal reassured her that they would take things one step at a time. "We'll protect this," he had said one night, his voice low and steady. "We'll make sure this stays ours." And for a while that's exactly what they did. Every weekend they could steal together felt like a small victory. They explored cities, cooked dinners at home, and shared stories about their pasts. Jamal listened when Veronica talked about her daughter, about the delicate balance between being a mum and still wanting love. He didn't shy away from the hard conversations, and that meant more to her than he knew. By the end of that first year, they had built something real, something that felt worth protecting. Friends said they looked perfect together. Fans online started shipping them as Veronica. It was all a bit surreal, but also sweet. For the first time in a long time, Veronica allowed herself to believe that maybe this was her second chance, her turn to have the love story that didn't end in disappointment. If only she knew how fragile that hope really was, because while the beginning had been beautiful, love, especially the kind that unfolds under the gaze of millions, has a way of testing even the strongest hearts. And for Veronica and Jamal, those tests were only just beginning. When Jamal moved back to San Diego, the distance between him and Veronica suddenly felt enormous. It wasn't just the miles stretching from one coast to the other. It was the quiet gaps that began to creep into their days. What started as a constant stream of texts, calls, and memes slowly turned into scattered replies and postponed conversations. Still, Veronica tried to stay optimistic. She understood what it meant to be in a long-distance relationship. She had done it before, but this time felt different. With Jamal, there was a connection she didn't want to lose, so she worked harder than ever to keep their rhythm alive. Every night, after putting her daughter to bed, she'd pour herself a glass of wine and wait for his call. Sometimes he'd answer with that same gentle voice that made her heart settle. They'd talk about everything: the show, his work, her plans, their future. But other nights, the calls came late and his tone carried fatigue that she didn't recognize from before. At first, she told herself it was just life. Everyone got busy, but the silence between their words began to linger longer. When they did meet, it was like nothing had changed. The moment they saw each other at the airport, everything clicked back into place. Jamal's arms around her erased every doubt she had, every moment of insecurity. Those weekends together were golden, filled with laughter, cooking, and slow mornings, where time seemed to move only for them. But leaving was always the hardest part. Each goodbye at the terminal felt heavier than the last. She'd watch him walk away, disappearing into the crowd, wondering if she was the only one struggling with the ache of the distance. For Jamal, long distance was new territory. He wasn't used to having someone depend on him in this way. He loved Veronica, but the balance between freedom and commitment was harder to maintain than he'd expected. He admired her independence, yet sometimes he felt the weight of her emotional presence even across the miles. Still, neither wanted to give up. They made rules. No going to bed angry, no ignoring texts for more than a few hours, and always saying goodnight no matter how tired they were. But rules can't always protect hearts. By the third month apart, Veronica noticed the shift. He didn't ask about her day as much. His messages were shorter. His calls ended faster. She'd scroll through old photos of them and wonder when the spark had started to fade. In interviews later, she'd admit that she felt something breaking even then, but she didn't want to believe it. "I thought it was just a phase," she told producers quietly. "I thought we'd bounce back like we always did." And they did sometimes. When Jamal surprised her with a visit, bringing flowers and that easy smile, everything felt right again. They'd walk through the city, hand in hand, pretending the world wasn't pulling them apart. But love built on borrowed time always has an expiration. Their story was now being followed by more eyes than ever. Fans analyzed every Instagram post, every hint, every pause in their online interactions. Are they still together? Became a trending question. For Veronica, the attention was suffocating. For Jamal, it was pressure he hadn't signed up for. They loved each other. That was real. But love alone was never going to be enough to bridge two lives that were moving in different directions. And though neither of them said it out loud, both began to feel the same quiet truth settling in. Distance wasn't just measured in miles, it was measured in effort, and the effort was starting to fade. By the time summer rolled around, their relationship had quietly shifted from effortless to uncertain. Neither of them said it outright, but the energy was different. Calls that once stretched past midnight now ended with tired goodbyes. Messages that used to be playful turned polite. And Veronica, who had always been confident in love, started second-guessing every little thing she said. The show's producers had already started reaching out again, sensing the buzz around their relationship. 90-Day Fiancé fans wanted more details, more drama, more of the story behind the picture-perfect posts. TLC offered a new feature segment focusing on long-distance love in the spotlight. Veronica wasn't sure if she wanted to say yes. She had promised herself she would protect this one, keep it real and private. But Jamal encouraged her gently, saying, "Maybe it's not a bad thing. We can show people what a real relationship looks like," she agreed. Part of her wanted to believe him. The cameras followed them during one of their meetups in Los Angeles. At first, everything looked great. Sunset walks, dinners with friends, laughter caught between soft background music. But behind the scenes, tension was simmering. Small things that never used to matter began to sting. Jamal took too long to respond to her texts. Veronica mentioned commitment and he froze. It wasn't that he didn't care, he did. But his version of love was quiet, cautious. He wanted time. He wanted to feel ready. Veronica, on the other hand, had already lived through the uncertainty. She had raised a daughter, built a life, and learned the hard way that waiting for someone to choose you can feel like losing yourself. During one dinner scene, she asked him on camera, "Do you see this becoming something long-term? Marriage, maybe?" Jamal hesitated just a moment too long. The silence said more than words ever could. He smiled softly and said, "I see potential in us. I just don't want to rush it. You know how public everything gets once people expect an ending." She laughed it off in front of the cameras. But that night, when the lights were off and the microphones were gone, she asked again, this time for real, "Do you love me enough to fight for this?" He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "You know I care about you. But love isn't about fighting every battle. It's about knowing which ones are worth fighting for." That answer stayed with her. Weeks passed and Jamal grew quieter again. He said work was keeping him busy, and Veronica tried to understand. She planned a surprise visit, hoping to bring back the warmth they'd lost. But when she arrived in San Diego, his expression was more surprised than happy. The weekend felt forced, like they were playing a part they'd both forgotten the lines to. She found herself lying awake at night beside him, staring at the ceiling, wondering when things had become this complicated. Love wasn't supposed to feel like walking on glass. For Jamal, the pressure was mounting. His friends teased him about being on TV, about dating an older woman with a child. He shrugged it off publicly, but privately the whispers got to him. He wasn't used to being the one under scrutiny, and part of him resented how much of his identity now revolved around her. They still said, "I love you." They still posted the occasional photo. But those words began to sound rehearsed, like lines they were expected to say because the audience needed reassurance that the story wasn't over yet. Veronica started keeping her emotions to herself. She stopped bringing up marriage, stopped asking about his future plans. When friends asked how they were doing, she'd smile and say, "We're figuring things out," even when the truth was that she didn't know what they were anymore. Love hadn't disappeared. It had just changed shape. It became quieter, heavier, something that lived more in memories than in the present. And somewhere deep down, Veronica began to sense that they were approaching a breaking point, one that no camera could capture, and no amount of love could completely repair. Every love story has its red flags. The trouble is you rarely see them waving until it's too late. For Veronica, the signs came slowly, disguised as excuses, silence, and half-hearted smiles. At first, they were easy to ignore. She told herself it was just stress, distance, or fatigue. But deep down, a small voice had already started whispering the truth. Something was slipping away. It began with the way Jamal started avoiding certain conversations. When she mentioned the future, he'd steer the topic towards something else. A funny story from work, a random meme, a memory from their first trip together. He was still kind, still attentive in small ways, but his warmth had grown cooler, quieter. She noticed it during a video call one evening. He was distracted, glancing off screen every few seconds. When she asked if everything was okay, he smiled and said, "Yeah, just tired." But the distance in his eyes told her more than his words ever could. Her friends saw it too. Tim, her longtime confidant, didn't say anything at first, but one afternoon over coffee he finally spoke up. "V, I know you love him, but are you sure he's still in this with you?" She sighed, staring at her cup. "He's just under pressure. He's not like the others. He's good." Tim's tone was gentle. "Good people can still walk away, you know." That conversation haunted her. The next few weeks were a blur of trying to hold things together. She planned visits, sent thoughtful texts, and tried to stay upbeat even when his replies grew shorter. When she suggested they start planning their wedding sometime next year, he gave a hesitant smile and said, "Let's not rush it, okay? I want it to be right." She told herself that was romantic, that he wanted it perfect. But something about the way he said it made her stomach twist. Fans online started noticing too. Their joint appearances became rare. Paparazzi shots caught Veronica alone at events. Social media detectives pointed out that Jamal had stopped liking her posts. Rumors began swirling: breakup, cold feet, new romance. She ignored them all. The world didn't know the whole story, and she refused to let strangers define what they had. But denial can be a powerful drug. When Jamal finally came to visit Charlotte again, the energy was off. They smiled for photos, but the air between them was tense. He seemed restless, checking his phone often, distracted even at dinner. Veronica tried to brush it off, but later that night, when she asked if he was happy, he hesitated just long enough for her heart to sink. "I'm trying to be," he said quietly. That night she cried in the bathroom, turning on the faucet so he wouldn't hear. Still, she didn't walk away. Love makes you believe you can fix things if you just try harder. So she tried. She reminded him of their first date, cooked his favorite meals, and talked about how strong they'd been through the distance. And for a few brief moments, she saw glimpses of the old Jamal, the one who made her laugh, who held her close and promised that love was worth the fight. But those moments never lasted. By the time wedding discussions came up again, Jamal's enthusiasm was gone. Veronica noticed how he smiled less when she talked about dresses and venues. He'd nod and say, "That sounds nice," but his voice carried no conviction. Even the producers sensed it. During one shoot, they pulled Veronica aside and asked gently, "Do you think he's ready?" She forced a smile. "He will be." The truth was, she wasn't sure anymore. The biggest sign came a month before the wedding. He missed a call, then another. Then an entire weekend without a word. When he finally texted, it was a short message. "Sorry, just needed space." Those 4 words shattered something inside her. Still, she convinced herself it was stress. Cold feet, pre-wedding nerves, anything but the truth she didn't want to face. Everyone around her saw it. The distance, the silence, the hesitation. But love, once it blinds you, makes you deaf too. Veronica stood in front of the mirror one night, staring at her reflection, whispering to herself, "He loves me. He wouldn't leave." But somewhere deep down, another voice, the one she had been ignoring for months, whispered back, "Not everyone who loves you stays," and she would learn that lesson in the hardest way possible. The wedding was set for early spring. A garden ceremony in Charlotte, small but elegant. Just family, close friends, and a few crew members who had been documenting their story for months. For Veronica, it was supposed to be a new beginning. She had poured her heart into every detail. The lavender table arrangements, the outdoor lights strung above the reception area, the playlist that included all the songs that had shaped their love. She even ordered custom cufflinks for Jamal, engraved with the words "Forever starts today." But as the date drew closer, something about the air around them began to shift again. Jamal grew quieter with each passing week. He said the right words when she needed reassurance. "I'm excited, it'll be amazing ways we've come so far." But the warmth behind those words was gone. He smiled for the cameras, but rarely reached for her hand when they weren't rolling. At first, Veronica blamed stress. Weddings were emotional. Maybe he just needed space to process it all. But then the signs became harder to ignore. He didn't help with the planning anymore. He missed appointments, forgot details, and often sounded distracted during calls. When she sent him photos of decorations, he replied with short messages like, "Looks good," or "whatever you like." It wasn't indifference. It was distance disguised as calm. Her friends noticed. He doesn't seem excited," one of them said gently. Veronica forced a smile. "He's just nervous. You know how guys are before big things. But at night, When she sat on the edge of her bed staring at her phone, waiting for a reply that didn't come, she couldn't help but wonder if it was more than nerves. A week before the wedding, Jamal flew in. The reunion was polite, not passionate. He hugged her, smiled, and said he was happy to be there, but his eyes gave away something else, a kind of quiet heaviness. They went through the motions, tuxedo fitting, family dinner, venue walkthrough, but Veronica could feel it. He was drifting, even as he stood beside her. During the rehearsal, as they practiced their walk down the aisle, Jamal seemed lost in thought. When Veronica squeezed his hand, he blinked, smiled faintly, and said, "Sorry, just thinking." "About what?" she asked softly. He hesitated. "Just everything." That night he couldn't sleep. He sat alone on the hotel balcony, staring at the skyline, the faint hum of city lights in the distance. He loved Veronica. He really did. But the thought of marriage terrified him in a way he couldn't explain. It wasn't about her age or her past or even the cameras. It was the weight of what it meant, to promise forever when his heart wasn't certain anymore. He thought about calling it off right then. But how do you break someone's heart without looking like a monster on national television? So he told himself he'd go through with it, at least until he could figure things out. Maybe clarity would come. Maybe it was just fear. Maybe love would return once the vows were said. Meanwhile, Veronica felt the cracks deepening. She could feel him slipping, but didn't know how to pull him back. Her smile became a mask, one she wore for her daughter, for the cameras, for herself. 2 nights before the ceremony, she found him sitting on the bed, scrolling through his phone, expression blank. "You okay?" she asked gently. He looked up. "Yeah, just tired." She sat beside him. "Are you sure we're ready for this?" He turned toward her, eyes soft but uncertain. "You're ready," he said quietly. "You've been ready for a long time." The words stung, though he didn't mean them to. Veronica turned away, blinking back tears. "And what about you?" He didn't answer. The silence between them that night was louder than any argument. The next morning he was gone early, saying he needed to clear his head. She didn't question it. She wanted to trust him. But as the hours passed, the unease inside her grew heavier. When he returned late that evening, he smiled as if nothing had happened. "Just went for a drive," he said. Veronica didn't push. She only nodded, choosing peace over confrontation. But in her gut she knew something was coming, something she wasn't ready to face. Still, she clung to hope. The dress was ready. The guests were flying in. Her daughter was excited. Everything was in place. Tomorrow, she told herself, would be the happiest day of her life. But deep down, a quiet dread whispered the truth she refused to hear. Tomorrow would change everything. The morning of the wedding arrived with soft sunlight breaking through the curtains of Veronica's hotel suite. The room smelled faintly of roses and hairspray, a mix of chaos and excitement. Bridesmaids fluttered around, laughter filling the air, makeup brushes tapping, cameras clicking. On the surface, everything looked perfect. Veronica smiled for the photos, her reflection glowing in the mirror as the stylist fixed her hair. But beneath that smile, her stomach twisted. Jamal hadn't texted since last night. "No good morning. No, can't wait to see you." Nothing. She tried to brush it off. Maybe he was nervous. Maybe he was with the guys. Maybe he was trying to make the day more dramatic for the cameras. Still, the silence gnawed at her. By noon, the wedding planner came in with a clipboard and a nervous smile. "Everything's on schedule," she said. But Veronica noticed her eyes darting toward her phone more than once. "Is Jamal downstairs?" Veronica asked, voice light but tight. The planner hesitated. "I think so. He's probably getting ready." "Don't worry, he's fine." But he wasn't. Downstairs in another room, Jamal sat alone on the edge of the bed, staring at his reflection in the mirror. The tuxedo fit perfectly, the boutonniere pinned just right, yet he felt completely out of place. His chest tightened every time he thought about walking down that aisle. He remembered the first time he told Veronica he loved her. How easy it was to say back then, when the world was quiet and uncomplicated. But now, surrounded by expectation, cameras, and a future he wasn't sure he wanted, those words felt heavier than ever. His phone buzzed, a text from his mother. "Proud of you, son. She's a good woman." He swallowed hard, typing back only, "Thanks, Mom." Then came a knock on the door. His best friend Malik stepped in, holding 2 glasses of water. "Big day, huh?" Malik grinned. "Yeah," Jamal murmured. "Big day." Malik studied him. "You okay, man? You look like you're about to pass out." Jamal took a slow breath. I don't know if I can do this." The words hung in the air like a confession. Malik blinked. "Bro, the ceremony starts in an hour." "What do you mean you don't know?" "I mean," Jamal said quietly, "I don't know if I can marry her. Not like this. Not when I'm not sure." Malik set the glass down, staring at him. "Then you need to talk to her now." But Jamal shook his head. "If I tell her now, I'll ruin everything. Everyone's here. The cameras, her family, her daughter. I'll destroy her." "Better to destroy one day than her whole life," Malik said. Jamal didn't respond. He just looked down at his hands, steady on the outside, trembling inside. Meanwhile, upstairs, Veronica was slipping into her gown. Her daughter stood beside her, smiling proudly, eyes shining. "You look so beautiful, Mom." Veronica felt tears sting her eyes. "Thank you, baby. I'm just ready for this next chapter." The clock ticked past 2. The ceremony was set for 2:30. Guests were seated, music softly playing. The cameras panned over the floral arches and white chairs glinting under the sun. At 2:15, the planner's assistant knocked gently. "It's almost time." Veronica smiled nervously. "Is Jamal ready?" The assistant hesitated. He's not downstairs yet. I'll check." Minutes passed. The room buzzed with whispers. The planner whispered into her headset, her voice low and tense. Veronica's heart began to race. "Where is he?" she finally asked, her voice trembling. No one answered at first. Then her phone buzzed. It was a message from Jamal. She froze, staring at the screen. Her hands shook as she unlocked it. "Jamal, I'm so sorry. I can't do this. I don't want to hurt you, but I can't go through with it." Her vision blurred. The room spun. The chatter faded into silence. For a long moment no one moved. Then her best friend stepped forward, whispering, "V, what happened?" Veronica's lips parted, but no sound came out. She handed over the phone. Her friend read the message, face paling. Outside, the guests murmured, wondering about the delay. The music looped awkwardly as producers exchanged confused glances. Veronica sat down slowly, clutching her bouquet, trying to breathe. "He left," she whispered. He walked out. Her daughter stood frozen in the corner, tears welling in her eyes. The cameras, sensing the weight of the moment, turned off one by one. No one had the heart to keep filming. For nearly an hour, Veronica sat there in silence, still in her wedding dress, surrounded by flowers, friends, and 1,000 unspoken questions. Every now and then, her phone buzzed with incoming messages, from guests, from producers, from fans already speculating online. But not from him. He was gone. By evening, Jamal had flown back to San Diego. No calls, no explanations beyond that single message. The world would learn about it days later when the story leaked. Headlines screamed, "90-day fiancé shock, Jamal walks out before wedding." Veronica left heartbroken at the altar. But in that quiet hotel suite, it wasn't a headline. It was a heartbreak, raw, real, and far away from the lights of television. That was the day everything changed.